Hey folks, Kozzi here, making another draft video for Pick One Pack One. I hope that your New Year's break and Christmas break's gone well. I had an enjoyable bit of time off, but I thought it's time to get back into it with a couple of drafts. I've been having a little bit of a rough one of late. Couple of mediocre results and getting run over by Warcry. It seems as though if you're not willing to respect the speed of other decks, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble. And so I've been tempted to try and just draft aggro, but for the purposes of the video, I really wanted to diversify, and so I'm kind of glad for having a first pick like Thunderstrike Dragon to see how we go doing something that's a little bit more based on the back foot. Of course, we never really know where the deck's going to end up. It could well be that the cards that come through will put me somewhere else, but Plague is beginning to make us look like a pretty nice Feln control deck, as most certainly is Hatchery Hunter. This guy is phenomenal if you manage to have a couple of cards left in your hand. My big challenge is going to be making sure that I live long enough to get to play these 6 drops, but I really don't want too much more off the top end here. Bloodright Callus is pretty rubbish in Limited, which is a shame. It's a lot of fun in Constructed. Outside of this, there's really not a lot that excites me. Jotun Warrior could be a decent roadblock. Haunting Scream I think people take way too high. Yeah, there is the Feln deck that has a whole bunch of abilities when they get in, and being able to give them flying and charge is nice, but I don't think it's as consistent or as powerful as what it is in Constructed. Relatively weak pack overall. I guess we'll just go for the Warrior and enjoy the fact that we have a big butt. Flash Freeze is okay, but nothing to write home about. I think Stash and 4th Tree Elder are definitely the best 2 cards in the pack, but that being said, I'm already chocked up on 6s. Do I look at just the equipment? I think the one card that I'm most likely to play there is the Flash Freeze, but I'm not super happy about grabbing it. That being said, I'm much happier to be grabbing myself a Stranger. Early blocker is always good. Interesting to note that a Towering Terrazon is coming through this late. Generally, that's a pretty high pick for time decks. Likewise, the Xenon Guardian is quite late as well. That being said, I do have a Thorn Beast. It's not going to be optimal in this build. There's probably not going to be many super low drop creatures to sacrifice into it, but it is interesting to note that that's looking moderately open, and I should keep an eye out for that. Amethyst Acolyte is exactly what I want. And whilst Runic Revolver is a great card, it's got nothing to do with this deck whatsoever. Spells are attachments I'm not quite as worried about as I am worried about creatures. So I guess in this scenario, Yeti Spy is the most playable. And being able to gain life is pretty brilliant. Tell you what, this first pack's treating me pretty well. We'll get rid of Ruin. Okay, so it's very clear that if we stay alive long enough, we've got ourselves a deck. The real challenge is just making sure we stay alive long enough. Celestia Omen's very, very powerful, but I think I'd be preferring the card draw right about now. And this is a very top-end heavy deck. That being said, this would be well, if it ever gets in, I'm laughing. I get myself 2 5/5 blockers. Perhaps the more disciplined pick is just to slow down the attackers. I could be thinking I noticed that time was open, and so having the opportunity to splash there would be good. In fact, I've got a lot of really interesting choices here, because Soul Collector is also useful. I think my biggest problem is going to be up against the Warcry or the token decks, and if that's the case, I want to be reducing just their efficacy as much as possible. Tundra Explorer is an interesting card, but I don't think I'm going to be attacking with it too much. Cobalt Acolyte, giving creatures flying, is always very, very useful, and currently I am a little soft to flyers, although these are the colors that I should be able to pick up more flyers in. I think I just want to stay on plan. I just want to be reducing those early attackers, surviving long enough. Yeah, wow. shouldn't be tempted by the Sky Snapper. The reality is I'm not building a deck that wants a reckless creature. A Thorn Beast, I'm beginning to see a really nice... Well, it's more a synergy if I get more Maguses. I think that's got to be the call. Again, we're always on the back foot here. Relatively happy to see the Eastwind Herald. That will help me slow down things a lot. Is this pure enough control to be wanting a backlash? Herald's Song is card draw, but it works a lot better when you have other cards with Echo. So likewise with Nesting Aviasaur. If you have cards with Echo, then it becomes pretty phenomenal pretty quickly. Do I have anything else? Okay, I think that's enough to tempt me. That's exactly what I'm hoping for here. He very much... Ooh, that's beautiful. So if I had picked the Beast Caller, I'd be much more tempted in that, but as is, I just really want to be making sure that I hit my land drops and I get some card selection. I'm not going to be playing the Arachnodon, but I'll pick it up anyway. Very, very nice cards in this pack. I'll be interested in the Destroyer, interested in the Frostcan, very interested in the Ice Sprite. Champion of Chaos is a great card in general, but it's not the deck that I'm building, and someone will be happy to get the Piercing Shot. Likewise. Yeah, very, very powerful deck overall. But I think the Ice Sprite is the one for me. I really want some unconditional removal right now. So I've got some choices here. I can either go for my fixing, I can go for just a generic blocker, but I think this works a lot better in the aggressive decks, or the Fanatic, which gives me the opportunity to have card draw and life gain. Perfectly adequate blocker, 3 power on a 3-drop. Yeah, I think I can convince myself of that. So do I want to have the removal for a flying unit, or think more about the likelihood of splashing into time? It's definitely the time's only been moving in the packs that are going to my left, so this will be the end of it. No, I'm a little bit soft to flyers at the moment. Even though it's conditional, I think I'd rather look at that. Annihilate is perfectly fine piece of removal that I'm very happy to receive. Do I want another Fanatic, a Levitate? I'm not too interested in the rest. If it would have been earlier in the draft, I'd become a lot more interested in the Static Bolt. How am I looking for creatures currently? So in my 1-drop, I have a Blind Storyteller, a Yeti Spy that I'll be unhappy if I play. Then in 2s, we have Piece of Removal, 2 2-drops. I then have 3, 4 3-drops, 5, plus, oh, 6. Okay, so I'm very, very clogged on 3, so I don't think I'm interested in the Gorgon Fanatic anymore. I would like to consider more 4s, but Back Alley Bouncer is playable at best. I think we'll go for the flexibility plus card draw. What's this? Once per turn, you may sacrifice a unit to deal 2 damage to the enemy player. I think that'd be great in a token build, but that's not my build right now. How many 3s is too many? Are there any of these that I'm less likely to play? The Thorn Beast is looking less exciting, so I could swap that for an Amethyst Acolyte. I have 3 of them. Or I could just look at getting myself some more card draw. I feel as though I want more card draw, and even though this is a premium 3, it's only a small upgrade on the 3s I currently have, whereas this could be a significant upgrade in my deck. So I think that's the direction I need to head. None of these are massively exciting. I think the likelihood of me wanting more 5-drops is probably relatively low, just in case if we splash. Lifesteal is helpful. Unblockable will be helpful if I do happen to drop the Gorgon Fanatic. But yeah, keeps me alive longer, so I'm happy. Wow, that's amazing to get last. Okay, so again, some really nice choices. I can look at having another Blind Storyteller just to get more card draw. I can look at the Seek Power, basically just to help me ramp up and to get my colors. And likewise, more 2 and 3s. How much factional pressure am I under? So I'm looking for triple purple, triple blue. Double blue. Actually, I think what I really want here is just the fixing. Whilst the Blind Storyteller is a great card, I feel as though I'd rather be just getting up to the top end of my curve as fast as I can. Wow, a whole bunch of rares I haven't seen before. At the end of each turn, deal 1 damage to the cursed player for each card they drew or discarded this turn. That's not going to help me too much at all. What is going to help me are these 2 pieces of removal, so I need to work out whether I'd rather have an Annihilate or a Suffocate. I guess the question is, how many dual-coloured creatures am I expecting to see from my opponents that I really care about and that I really want to kill? If we are talking about the token decks and the aggressive red-green or red-purple decks that I'm most scared of, then I feel a lot of this is much of muchness. Like even in the pack we see one example of one that Suffocate will kill if I was to get it early, but Annihilate won't. Annihilate also has more versatility of being able to kill creatures at the top end if we have. So this is a less desirable top deck if we manage to just trade resources. It's also a fast spell which could help me in double blocks or... Yeah, okay, I've been convinced. Wow, premium feeding time. Premium removal, exactly what I want for this deck. The Lightning Strike would have been exciting as well, as with the Feln Stranger to help me get my factional identity cards up, but I can't go past the removal right now. And a Dark Return is also a great card. I'll take another feeding time. I'd never complain about that. And whilst I'm not a fan of hate picking, there's nothing here that has me excited, so we'll get rid of one of the cards that scares me the most. Second Sight is great if I had more Echo cards. As it stands, I think the only Echo cards I have are 2 Herald Song, as well as my Dragon. Blood Beetle, not super exciting. It's a very good card to be going this late. I don't think I'm ever going to be wanting a 3rd Herald Song, so we'll take a Backlash just so I can consider it in building. And I think I'm more likely to play the Black Alley Bouncer. Okay, so I'm quietly optimistic, having seen how that draft went. I definitely feel as though my colours are open. I'm always nervous. It feels as though the way Eternal Limited is going, it definitely favours the aggressive deck. I find that I'll often have decks like this where I'm feeling quietly confident, and then before I know it, I've been totally run over. Although I feel as though I definitely have a plan. And that curve isn't looking terrible to be able to deal with an aggressive deck. So, what's less exciting? I could be tempted to cut that, but I feel as though life gain is going to be important for me right now. Yeti Spy does nothing for me. Annihilates are great. Backlash will definitely be one on the shortlist for me to consider. Eastwind Heralds are useful because there are some aggressive decks that are running the Valkyrie Aspirant, the 1-drop 1/1, which I don't think is a great card, but in a Warcry deck can get big very quickly, or when they put equipment on it. Saying that out loud, does this help me that much? It does help me against the 3/1 haste creature with flying. It does help me stop the 2/2s. Speaking, oh, there's my Levitate. Great. We'll have those on the shortlist to consider. Herald's Song isn't premium card draw, but it has a place in this deck. Whether it has 2 places in the deck is a different question. Violent Gusts are very, very powerful. If this was Magic, this would be going straight into my sideboard, and I'd be excited to bring it in a lot of matchups, but we'll need to consider, and we've only got 1 match, just how good that is for us. Snow Scenery is useful again against the token decks, as is Acolyte. Flash Freeze, I think, is less exciting. It doesn't actually remove them, and now that we have some hard removal, I feel as though I'd prefer that. Ice Spray's great, Plague's great. Thorn Beast I can consider, whilst the Scaly Garan does have the perfect size for what I want. Don't think I'm interested in the Warrior. I don't know why they put the Maguses down here in the deck list. So as this currently stands, we're looking at 50-50. I definitely want a decent number of lands for this deck, or a decent number of sigils rather. I imagine that I'll be looking at about 18 or 19. With a 50-50 breakdown, it probably means I'm going to be wanting 9 shadows. Oops. About 10 primals. I do need to consider that. I've got the Seek Power, which helps a little bit. Because this also necessitates 11 cuts. The Thorn Beast allows me to kill someone from earlier, but I don't have a lot of people from earlier who I want to be killing, so I think he's cut. I don't think I'm going to need 2 schemes. Herald Song and Second Sight seems weak. At the top end, these are both game winners. Is she a game winner for me? So it's only when I play a shadow unit. Including her, I can play a shadow unit from the void. How many shadow units do I have that I care about? Perhaps I should have been considering that a little bit more carefully during the actual draft, so I'd be getting back Acolytes, Fanatic, which could be good. Scheme, Wisdom. I think she's actually going to get cut. 8 mana 6/6 Deadly is very, very good, but it's high on the top end, and I'm not going to be getting a huge amount of 8. The Maguses could definitely tempt me. Alright, we'll leave that there for the time being. It looks as though I'm very heavy on 4s, and now that I've found these Maguses down here, I'm comfortable in cutting it. Frostkin is great. Magus is great. Feeding Time is great. Is 6 great? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I could probably afford to go down 1 at least. If that's the case, would I rather cut Frostkin? Magus. Frostkins are a temporary solution. I feel as though they're better when you're aggressive because they allow you to get in and get damage through, whereas they don't permanently deal with the problem for me, and it's not as though I have the removal spells that deal with exhausted units. Yeah, okay, I feel as though that's the cut to get that down to 5. In my 3s, I have Xenon, Wisdom, which are great. Scheme is underwhelming. Slightly too harsh on Scheme. Plague is fantastic. Ice Sprite is fantastic. Gorgon is good. I don't have a lot of lap gain, so I want to keep it. Although how likely am I to be getting things through? If I've got the removal, I can definitely force my way. I feel as though Snowslinger is one of the weaker ones. Do I want my sideboarded card? So this again isn't card advantage, it's just card selection, so I feel as though I'd probably be rather trying to get my card advantage. So Backlash is one of these interesting cards. It is fantastic in a limited scenario, and then it's just about the worst card in my deck for the rest. If my opponent is only playing creatures, it does absolutely nothing, although I found that most aggressive decks, which again are the decks that I'm scaredest of, will always be playing a couple of pieces of equipment, but by the same token I'll be needing to actually have the mana open, or the power open. It's reasonable late game if I have a board presence, so if we're at parity, because I can hold it and then probably get tempo advantage. Annihilate's a good, levitate. Okay, I feel as though I just don't have space for ghost form. I really don't want to be cutting creatures, so I'm low on them. Yeah, I just don't feel as though I have the space for it. Perhaps 19 is one too many when I've got to seek power. Nervous about cutting Vara. Just well, she doesn't really count as a unit. If I get her in my hand and I don't get enough sigils, she's effectively a dead card. I feel as though she's just too greedy, and if that's the case, it gives me the opportunity to lower my curve a bit. 17 is probably too low, although I have a seek power, and I've only got 2 cards that cost 6. It's probably fair. If that's the case, what am I thinking about bringing back in? There was the Backlash. There was the Snowslinger, which is an OK blocker. Frostkin is definitely more exciting than that. Thorn Beast is perfectly fine on curve. Curve, I think, is my biggest consideration. So I feel bad to leave her out. It's definitely for sure. She's very much a top-end game winner for me. She's just so expensive. I want to very quickly check what RNG thinks of her. Yeah, solid A. I think she definitely wins you some games. If I drop her, there's not too many things that can attack into her. And if it's the only card that I'm using that's that expensive, and it may well even just become a cheap Sky Serpent anyway. That, and to be honest, I'd like to see how she goes. It's not often you get the chance to try these cards out, and so whilst I have an intuition, you never really know until you play it, so I feel as though this is the opportunity to try it. If that's the case, we're back at 46. Thornbeast, what I want to cut? I think 2 Herald Song is too many. If I had Wisdom of the Elders, I'd have more. But, I mean, as in, if the Herald Songs were Wisdom of the Elders, I'd be much happier keeping them in. But I do very much feel as though I need to have 18 lands if I'm going to be running up to 8. At a minimum, I probably need 19, to be honest. But we'll cheat a little bit. It's in the 3s we need to cut if there's any way. Alrighty, Thornbeast. So there we have it. It looks like we're going to be running Feln control today. As you could see, my real priority was to make sure I just don't get run over in the early game so I can allow my late game to go well. We have the pieces of premium removal, we have a little bit of card draw, and we definitely have a couple of bombs. So I hope that you choose to click on the next link and see how these drafts treat me. I'll see you in a moment.